Welcome to the 2020 Christmas Eve edition of the live Ask a Private Investigator web presentation. I have a couple subjects of inquiry from clients, and of course we'll be watching for your emails at help@activeintel.com if you have any questions for an investigator. It was a busy year for investigations. The big theme for 2020 was online scams. There were so many new versions of online frauds and scams that we've seen a spike, a huge jump in the number of people that have been scammed. And, the dollar amounts are increasing. Prior to this year, we saw most scams were looking to get, $400 or $500 from a potential victim, something on Craigslist, something on social media, Instagram, either buying a product, maybe sending money for an investment in a matter of hundreds of dollars. But this year, the numbers are higher. They're tens of thousands of dollars. I think the average that we've seen for consumer online scams has been about $16,000. That's the amount that's the average that we've seen. Now, of course, large corporate scams that we work on can be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, but the online consumer scams are tens of thousands. And that's going to be the first question we're going to answer: how to recognize some of these scams. One of the common methods that these scammers will use is what's called incremental requests for money. At first, they'll ask you for a few $100s. A lot of these scams have to do with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or some other untraceable currency method. Sometimes they make up their own cryptocurrency. They make a new name for it. Sometimes they tell you they're trading in an existing platform like Bitcoin and want you to send them your Bitcoin login. But it usually starts out small. Send us $500. We talked to a client just recently that it started out with $500. They looked in their account, and all of a sudden it said, you have $2,000 in your account. We made you money with your $500. Now it's at $2,000. But if you put in $800 more, we can make it go up to $10,000. So the statement they're sending you that shows $2,000 is just made up. It's fake. But now when you see it, it's more likely you're going to send them more money. So now you send them $800 more. And then in this case, they ramped it up to their account showed $10,000, right? So now you're thinking, well, I put in, $1,300 and I'm up to $10,000. And they'll come up with other reasons to ask for more money. In this case, it was, well, if your account is over 12, you can now start taking withdrawals. You can't withdraw anything until it gets to 12,000. Your account's at 10,800, so you have to put in 1,200 more. So they put in 1,200 more. So now they're up to $2,500 they've put up. And they put in for a withdrawal, and the excuse or the scam that made them give more money was, well, the maximum withdrawal you can do at any one time is $5,000, and each withdrawal has a withdrawal fee of $200. So they put in two $5,000 withdrawals and a $3,000 withdrawal, and each one had a $200 fee. So now they gave them another $600. Well, of course, none of the money ever was withdrawn or sent to them. So all in all, each incremental request for money was in the few hundreds of dollars. I think the highest one was $800. But these scammers ended up getting, $3,000 from the victim, $3,200. And that's how most of these work. So if you're in a scam where they keep asking for small amounts of money but repeat the request, that's a red flag. Again, you want to double check and make sure that you're verifying any source of investment. Incremental requests for money is the most common thing we've seen. Another question that was left over from last time had to do with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Why are those the scams? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, by its definition, any cryptocurrency is opaque by nature. It's not like a real estate investment. You can do a title search on a property. It's not like a bank account where you can see the source of funds. Cryptocurrency is by definition anonymous. And the mechanics of how it's created is algorithms and mining, and there's a lot of details to it. Because of that, scammers can hide behind that lack of transparency and lack of understanding for most common investors and make up any story they want about why cryptocurrency is going to make you money. And even at the highest levels, there could be fraud. Now, there's an article that came out yesterday or day before, a company called Ripple, that was the third largest cryptocurrency platform behind Bitcoin. And the SEC charged them. And we'll take a look at we have another video about this, but just to give you an idea, here's the complaint where the SEC has charged Ripple Labs and the principals for doing some type of a non-registered security. It says they never filed a registration statement, even though they were warned. It claims, and again, this is alleged at this point, innocent until proven guilty, in this illegal activity from 2013 to present. And what we're talking about is a lot of money. They were able to raise at least $1.38 billion by selling what they called XRP, which was their version of a cryptocurrency. And the current CEO orchestrated these sales and personally profited by $600 million, according to this complaint. So it doesn't have to be a small operator. It can be a large-scale operation. And whether or not this operation was a fraud or a scam or not isn't the issue. The issue is they got people to send them $1.4 billion worth of money. And they did it because cryptocurrency is very difficult to verify and validate what's behind it. So that's why that method or that subject is a large percentage of the new scams. And the FBI actually came out with a report a few weeks ago that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is a large percentage of where scams are coming from. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin is a scam. It doesn't mean that any one company is a scam. It just means that cryptocurrency platform or type of investment is often used as an excuse for a scam because it's hard to verify. Let's see what we have for questions from viewers. Looks like we have a question that has to do with hidden camera laws. Let's see if I can get some more feedback on that. Sounds like what they're asking is it legal to place a hidden camera? And I don't know if they mean an investigator or a private person, but typically hidden camera laws are valid at the local level. Different states have different rules about hidden cameras. Different states have different rules about even recording of audio, microphones. So you want to make sure that you understand the laws in your state. But in most cases, and this is not like anything else we talk about, not intended to give you legal advice. We're not attorneys. We're not giving you legal guidance. You want to get that from a qualified attorney. But in most cases, what we see is if you have a residence in a premise, or if you are a legal resident of a premise, you're allowed to place cameras to monitor your residence. They could be security cameras, they could be nanny cameras, they could be, baby monitors, that kind of thing. There may be requirements that if you are allowing the use of the premises to be used by other people, you have to notify them. A lot of times this comes up with like Airbnb. Or short-term rentals. If you have cameras monitoring it, obviously you can't have them in private areas like in bathrooms or changing areas, but you can monitor your premises. Most states allow you to do that if you are a legal resident. An article from a story came up, I think this week, where there was a case that happened, I think it was Pennsylvania, where somebody had put a camera in a nursing home room where they had a relative that was in this nursing home that they thought maybe wasn't being cared for properly. So they placed a camera to monitor this, this location, and it turns out that the the employees of this care facility were actually not doing the right thing and not giving proper care to the person. And I think somebody died because of it, or somebody was seriously injured. And it went to court. The person was prosecuted, and the claim they made, the defendant, was that they shouldn't have had a camera there to begin with. So nobody should have known what I did. Well, that's a moral question, but it turns out that the court in this case prevailed in the rights of the people to have a camera in that room, because they were renting that room for their relative. They had a legal right to be there. That was a premise residence. And so the evidence was allowed to be used in that case. So, yeah, it looks like the question, the person clarified it, was, can a person put a camera in their own home? And in most cases, yes. You want to double check your state laws and get good legal advice, but that's the purpose of doing a camera, is monitoring. Could be security, could be a nanny cam, it could be a baby monitor. As long as you're not using it for something that's illegal, right? Or recording somebody in a private area, in most cases, that's going to be allowed. Now, can an investigator do that? Well, if it's on your behalf, more than likely the investigator can do the same thing you can do. One thing that comes up a lot of times with investigators is even external video monitoring. If somebody is inside their house and use a telephoto lens to zoom in through their window, in most cases, nobody can do that, not even an investigator, because they have an expectation of privacy in their personal life. So that's a good question. That comes up a lot. And that's one of the things that is usually the first part of many client conversations, is the client is asking, well, can you do this? Can you record somebody? Can you, call the police on somebody? Can you set somebody up and do a sting operation? The one thing that you want to remember is you don't want anybody doing something illegal on your behalf, whether they're an investigator or not. Investigators shouldn't do it anyways, but there are some private investigators that either don't know the law or are willing to break the law. And even if you find one that's willing to do something illegal, you don't want to have it be done on your behalf, because you could have liability for that too. Let's see what else we have on the questions. We have one from earlier about missing persons. Let's see what else. This is another question about the subject of asset searches that we've talked about before. And they want to know what information comes from a bank account search. A bank account search is a specific type of asset search, and it is designed to find credit assets, banking assets, that are in the name of a person, or their tax ID number, their social security number. And in most cases, the report will have in it the name of the financial institution. It'll have the name of the depositor, Joe Schmo depositor. It'll have the balance of that account, the date it was active. And in many cases, it'll also have prior activity. So if you had a deposit of $500 2 days ago, it'll show that. If you have a check that was written last week for $242.12, it'll show that with a check number. More historical detailed information, for example, a bank statement from 6 months ago, will probably not be on a bank account report. However, if you do need that information for a court process, once you have the basic banking information, you can usually use that to request or subpoena or get from discovery other records. Again, these are legal questions, and you want to get good legal advice about what you can do and can't do with banking information. But those more detailed records, once you open the door to that bank account, you can usually get you can even go back 2 or 3 years sometimes on banking history to find out what a person has done within that bank account. And that's one very particular type of asset search that people do all the time. Take a look at what other questions have come up. That one's not really an investigator question. All right. Here's one regarding a missing person, and this is something we had before. Um, says, looking for my son. He's an EMT in the military. Haven't heard from him since July. Keep calling. Close family of four. Don't know what to do to find him. I have his social security number and his information. This is common, and this is related to the other missing person inquiry from yesterday. Um, when a person is not in contact with relatives or close friends that they normally remain in contact with, um, the pathway to discovering that person usually starts by rewinding the time a short period. So if they were in contact with you up until a few days ago, a few weeks ago, you want to go back in time to when the contact was normal and then look at records from that point. If you can, get access to emails, text messages, social media. A lot of times, if you look at social media posts from before this disappearing event occurred, you'll find clues to where they were going. Maybe they visited places they never visited before. Maybe they were in contact with new people. If a person in this case is in the military may have records about the location or posting of that person. The other thing you want to do is look at other related groups or associations they have. Are they a member of any clubs? Are they on any employment groups? Are they associated with any internet forums? You know, if they're a chess player, are they in a chess forum? And you can look at what those activities are. One of the things we recommend is if a person is using any online platform, even dating platforms, if you go to a profile in most online platforms, in many cases, it'll give you a last active date, right? We had an example where there was a person we're looking for that is a member of a four-wheel off-road mud, Jeep organization online. And when we found that the person disappeared, let's say 2-3 weeks ago, there was activity of that person logging into that forum within the last couple of days. So they're still active. Now, they weren't posting anything. They weren't putting any messages, but it shows when it was last active. Even with Instagram, if you look at an Instagram feed list of people that you're associated with, it'll show you when they were last active on the contact page. So that's a place to start. Are they still being active on social media, still being active in their other groups? And usually if somebody has become inactive with contacting relatives and colleagues that they're normally associated with, that means they've replaced that group maybe with other people. And to find the link to those other people, again, if you go back in time to find out where they were located, it's always good if you're worried about somebody's well-being or their immediate safety, you want to contact, law enforcement or some public sector authority that might be able to at least put a report and keep an eye out for them. In the military, there's different groups that are advocates for family members and safety of enlisted people or officers for that matter. You want to make sure that notice gets made. And if you feel like there's any other legal risks, either to you or to that person, you may also want to get legal advice from an attorney, right? So if you think the person might do identity theft and start putting loans in your name, or somebody might be putting loans in that person's name or stealing money or embezzling, you may want to contact an attorney to have legal protections put in place. One thing that sometimes a court can do, again, this is legal advice, you want to get this from an attorney, but we see this a lot, is if the court is maybe cautious about giving you information as a family member, because this day and age, it's not automatic. If you're even a parent and you have concern about a child and you go to a court and say, look, I'm worried about my kid. I'm worried they're hanging around with the wrong people, maybe doing drugs. I need you to tell me where they are. Look them up. Sometimes the court or the judge might be concerned about the well-being of that kid, maybe trying to protect them from you, because they don't know what the story is. They don't know if you're an abusive parent or if you're trying to be overbearing on them. So they might kind of proceed with caution, the abundance of caution, to not give you too much information, because they don't know if you're trying to track them down for nefarious purposes. So sometimes what you can request, and what the court might do on their own, but if they don't, you can ask your attorney to look into this, is to have a guardian appointed, a guardian ad litem, where it's somebody that the court appoints as an official trustee of that information. The court can still do their due diligence. Maybe they do research. Maybe they contact law enforcement, look at motor vehicle records, who knows what. And they give that information to the guardian, and then the guardian is entrusted with releasing that to you. So if you're thinking either suspiciously, or maybe even the court tells you that they're holding back information because they're not sure what your intentions are, ask them to appoint a guardian ad litem if that's appropriate. And we've done many cases where, as an investigative agency, we've been instructed by the court to give information only to the guardian, not to even our own client, because they're concerned about the well-being of the subject of the investigation. So if somebody's missing and they are not following their normal protocol, first make sure that you're not worried about your well-being or the well-being of that person. If there is, contact law enforcement, either where you are or where that person might be. If you're worried about other risks, financial risks or legal risk, then you want to contact an attorney. Once those two immediate dangers are covered and protected, then you can look at investigating where that person went. What is their current status? Missing persons are a difficult thing, because sometimes a person wants to be missing. Maybe they want to be separate from their prior circle of friends and colleagues. Maybe they just need time for themselves. Maybe the relatives and friends they were associated with are doing something that harms them inadvertently. So sometimes it's intentional. But as a concerned family member, concerned colleague, associate, you may have worries about that person. The guy from Zappos Shoes, Shay, out of Las Vegas, he, billionaire level affluent person, appears that, for some period of time, a year and a half, he was acting differently. He wasn't hanging around his normal friends, his normal business associates, his normal professional colleagues, and he went off into a different world, apparently, according to news articles. It's unknown if it's true. Got involved with different types of drugs or hallucinogens, and guy ends up dead, right? And it looks like there was lots of people concerned about him. There were people that tried to get him committed, tried to get him help, tried to get him on rehab, and who knows if more things could have been done or not. It might have changed the outcome, but now the guy's dead. Tony Shea, I guess his name. And that's the kind of thing people worry about. If somebody's distant from their normal family, what are the things that colleagues can do to prevent that from happening? And we have some other videos about missing persons, and you can contact us about specifics of your case. Let's see what else is on the list. That question has been covered. Here's one. Somebody wants to know how to know if another person's been using a fictitious name. I don't know if it's using your name or using somebody else's name. And this can happen. We see a lot of times when we run background checks on people, part of the background check report in many cases will show other people who have used this name, other people who have used this social security number, or this person has used other names. So it's not uncommon. We see it probably 20, 30% of the time where there's an alternate name used by a person, or somebody is using somebody else's name. Now, in some of the cases, it's harmless. Like if your name is Joseph Smith, you might go by Joey, right? Technically, that's an alternate name, and that will pop up on a background check. Sometimes it's also accidental, where if it's husband and wife and somebody is filling out a form, the company might type in the opposite name and it'll show that they're using the other name. It's usually not anything that's nefarious. It can happen with a child. You sign your kid up for some, sports program and accidentally puts your name as the applicant. So that can happen. But when we see a subject, which happens very, very frequently, it's a subject of an investigation, and it says this person has used the following names, and it's got a list of 10 different names. None of them are anything like theirs. It's not Joey for Joe or Johnny for John or anything like that. Bobby for Robert. They're completely different names, completely different, spellings, and first and last name are both different, and different social security numbers. It's obvious that person is going out of their way to try to misidentify themselves. And who knows what the reason is. It may be employment. It may be to try to avoid debt. It may be to try to avoid being located. There was an article about this reminds me about a cheerleading coach this week. Let's see if I can pull it up and pop it in our screen, who was arrested at some point for misconduct, right? It's in Washington State. I'm going to put it here on the screen in a minute. And he was arrested, and he's convicted of some serious offenses. So we won't mention because sometimes it'll block the video, but you have an idea what they might be. And he was coaching, teenage girls in cheerleading. And he used a fraudulent social security number to clear a screening for membership in the U.S. All-Star Federation, which is a national governing body of competitive cheerleading. And he went on for 3 years coaching teenage girl cheerleaders after this conviction of what kind of an offense. And the only way he was caught is he went to an event for this cheerleading organization, and a person saw him there coaching who was part of that original conviction, of somebody who was working with him when he got arrested the first time, and said, what is this guy doing coaching? So the guy, actually was a girl, who saw him still coaching, was alarmed to see him still working in the sport, that he called the organization and said, look, what is this guy doing? He's got a conviction. And they said, no, he doesn't. His background check was clean. So fortunately, this woman who saw him went to the court and got copies of all the convictions and got copies of all the records and sent it. And that's when they found out he used an alternate of his name and also an alternate of his social security number. So using different names is very common. It doesn't take much to have a different name be used. We had a fraud case where there was an investment company that is actively requesting investors to send them money, hundreds of thousands of dollars for real estate investments. Still unclear whether or not what this company is doing. But one of the principals of this company, on all of the company letterheads, websites, documents, marketing, everything about the company, is using an alternate spelling of their name. Their last name has a double letter in it, right? Like, let's say if the name was Support, S-U-P-P-O-R-T, they're using S-U-P-O-R-T. They're removing one letter. Instead of a double letter, they're doing a single letter. And as we're doing some due diligence for the principals of this company, we found this person doesn't exist with one P. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Well, we did some more background checking and found out that the person's last name actually has two P's. And this is a made-up example. It's not actually Support or P's. It's different letters. And the reason why maybe they changed their spelling is because the person with two P's in their name has a fraud complaint against them for a Ponzi scheme and bankruptcy fraud that happened 5 years ago. So it may be that the company or the person or somebody, or who knows, is trying to divert attention from that record so nobody finds that record. And it may be innocuous. Maybe this new company is doing nothing wrong and they just want to avoid bad publicity. We don't know. May have been a typo. I mean, a typo in 20 different places is unlikely. But using alternate spellings or different names is common, and that's how you find it. You do some research on the name that you think is being misused to see where it's being misused. Is it used at another address? If this person is supposed to live at 12 Main Street, why do they have records at 23 Oak Street, right? Maybe it's a rental property, but on the other hand, you have to have a good reason for all those things. And that's where an investigative due diligence comes in, to find where these alternate names are being used. So that's very common. Let's see what else we got. Sample report. This could be a question here. Here we go. Just typing to get some more details. This person asked a question about internet commerce. I'm just trying to get some more details. So it had to do with an internet deal that went bad, and they were awarded a judgment. And then how do you collect money from the assets? So if you have a judgment against another party, that means that a court has issued a ruling that says that person owes you money, right? So if you file a lawsuit against somebody for $20,000 because they defrauded you in this online deal, whatever it was, you go to court. The court hears both sides. You say you were defrauded. They say you weren't. The court hears the evidence. At the end of that says, you're right. You were defrauded and that person owes you the money. Well, as you probably already know, the court doesn't write you a check for that money. You still have to collect it from the debtor. You get a judgment, but that judgment is a piece of paper only. It's not money. You can't deposit a judgment in your bank. I'm not trying to, beat a dead horse with that, but it's common. Some people think, well, if they get a judgment, they automatically get the money. The money is secondary. The court just says if you're right or wrong. Now, once you get the judgment, now you can pursue the money. First thing to do is to identify where the debtor or the defendant, the other person in the case, has assets. And it might be bank accounts, it might be real estate, it might be vehicles, it might be corporate assets, it might be intellectual property. There's 8 or 9 different types of assets a person can have. Once you have a judgment against a person, now you can pursue recovering that judgment from those assets. And the way that it's done is first identifying the assets. Okay, this bank account has $18,250. They have this real estate worth $380,000. They have this vehicle worth X amount. They have this intellectual property, whatever it is. And you make a schedule of all the assets. And then what you do is you take that judgment. Again, disclaimer, this is legal stuff. You have to get good legal advice on exactly how to do this. I'm just describing the mechanics of it, not necessarily the legalities of it. Get an attorney is the bottom line. So you get a schedule of the assets, you take your judgment and you connect them to the assets, and the court will do that. Usually the court will issue what's called a writ of garnishment, meaning that it says, yep, this is owed to this person, and yes, it is okay for you to take it from this bank account. Once you have that judgment and that writ of garnishment, you walk into the bank with those 2 documents and you serve them upon the bank where the person has the money, and they give you a cashier's check. If you're garnishing real estate, you take the writ of garnishment, you take the judgment, you go to the clerk of courts, and you have the clerk put a lien on the property or transfer the property to your name, depending upon the scenario. If it's a vehicle, the vehicle is titled in, let's say, the state of Pennsylvania. You take the writ of garnishment, your judgment, you go to the Pennsylvania DMV, which in this case is called PennDOT, and you serve it upon PennDOT, and they change the title into your name. So that's the last step of the asset recovery process is once you have your judgment, you get your order from the court to collect the judgment, and you serve it upon whichever trustee is holding that asset. Could be a bank, DMV, clerk of court, UCC filing, something else. And that's how you get your asset, and that's how you get the cash into your bank account, is by serving that record. So we have time for about one more question. Let's see what we can find through the list. That one we've discussed a few times. Let's find one that's newer. All right. This one is a subject we've talked about briefly before, well, a few times before, but it's been a while. Need to retrieve deleted voicemails. So records that are originated or kept on mobile devices, cell phone, tablet, even some computers, text messages, pictures, map data, those are all stored in multiple places. They're kept in a registry inside that device. Many times they're also put into the cloud, the service provider. Just because somebody deletes a text message doesn't mean it goes away. There's at least 3 or 4 other places that text message exists, even if it's at the other end of that message. If you sent a message, you delete it, it's still on the other person's phone, or vice versa. Even if both people delete it, it's probably still in the memory of the cloud that of the service provider. It may be in the records for the phone system. If it's an Android device, the Android platform may have a record of it. And if it needs to be recovered, there are recovery methods that can be done either with or without having the device. In fact, there was an issue where a school system was having a controversy where they're accessing students' phones. Technically, their student code of conduct required them to give their mobile devices to the administration upon request, right? Whether that's right or wrong or correct or moral or not, that wasn't the issue. The issue is, what was the school doing? They were looking at their text messages, their pictures, what they're emailing. But then the school was going and undeleting some old messages, recovering old pictures, looking at historical map data, and they were sued. And the school system had to defend itself of why they were uncovering these things. And technically, according to their code of conduct, they were allowed to do it. But it opened up, a larger battle about, if they were allowed to do this. The most important part of the article was showing that this can be done, right? There are programs and services, and you'll find that on our website, about recovering deleted records from mobile devices. They could be tangible records like documents. You download a PDF file, it's on your mobile device, you delete it, it's still going to be there somewhere. Your record of downloading it will be there. You visit a web page, you put in information on the web page, that information will be there. You receive a text message with a photo, you delete the text message and the photo. It can be recovered. Even if a message is sent or received through a separate app, one of the most common is WhatsApp, and you delete the entire app, those records are still recoverable in most cases. So the question was, can you retrieve those messages? This was going to be used in family court, and had to do with attendance records, showing that this child actually attended school and attended court, and it was in deleted records, and those can be recovered. So thanks again for all the questions. We appreciate the interest in Investigator Services. If you have questions in the meantime, you can email them. You see the address on the screen, help@activeintel.com. You can always email questions there, even when we're not on the air, and we'll get to them the next time we do a live video. The next live video will be after Christmas. It'll be next week. We'll do one more at least before the end of the year, and cover the topics that are either emailed in the meantime or that come in live while we're doing the video. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great Christmas, and hopefully you can, even though at this day and age you can't spend as much time with as many people, you can at least enjoy the family and friends that you have. And then we'll see you again following Christmas and after